RuneScape is an MMO created by Jagex, originally released in 2001. With over 300 million accounts created, it is considered to be one of the largest and most updated free MMORPGs. To be brief, it's a point-and-click game with no abilities or WASD movement. You click to move, attack, etc. Despite its success, it hasn't been without any hiccups. Two major problems have been plaguing the game since its early days: botting and real-world trading. Most of the things I'm going to be talking about in this video pertain more to real-world trading, and although botting is a huge problem, it's simply just opening another huge can of worms. Botting involves using a program to automate gameplay, while real-world trading revolves around players selling in-game items for real-world money. Despite many controversial efforts by Jagex to curb these practices, new methods of botting and gold selling continue to emerge. In response to player feedback and controversial updates, Jagex now maintains two versions of RuneScape: RuneScape 3 and Old School Runescape, also known as osrs. This video is going to be focusing on Old School Runescape because it's the one that I play, and it's also the more popular version. Gambling is a huge part of Old School Runescape. To be fair, the game revolves around, well, getting lucky. It's essentially going for drops that have a small chance. Have you ever seen this before? What about this? This is how people gamble in RuneScape. Usually, you wear the same gear, and whoever gets more lucky wins. Let's just hope you don't get scammed by a random person on the internet. It's been a big problem in the game, not only leading to toxicity and creating a bad environment online, but this also causes problems for Jagex. These gamblers seem to either walk away with nothing, or end up selling the small profits they've made before losing it all. Many gambling streamers even ask or beg for money from their viewers. Some of these streamers have hundreds or even thousands of viewers and have taken large sums of gold from their audience or random people they meet in-game. I won't name anyone in particular. There are streamers who ask for in-game donations and either gamble it away or end up selling it for real-world money. Usually, this gambling is known as death matching, which, although it's a generic term for any two players deciding to fight each other, the term usually refers more so to the people that are gambling, wearing the same gear, simply clicking on each other, and seeing who gets more lucky and wins. Previously, there was something in the game called the Duel Arena. It was originally made as a cool place to battle other players, hang out with your friends, and maybe make some new ones. But it very quickly turned into one of the biggest scenes of degenerate gambling in online gaming. Dubbed as the Sand Casino, players would stake a certain amount of gold and fight another player. People would go in with the same gear and create a game of pure chance, and whoever wins gets all the money. After over a decade of degeneracy and scamming later, Jagex luckily decided that it was time to neuter the Duel Arena, as it wasn't fitting or appropriate for the game or the community. With the removal of this, players turned to death matching, which is a generic term for two players agreeing to fight, but is essentially the same thing as how the Duel Arena worked, where people would have the same gear, stats, and money, and was also a game of complete chance. It isn't very surprising to see how these games of chance never really go away, even after developer intervention and player input. There are definitely some players that are good people who have participated in this. It's not to say that it's directly morally wrong, and although games of chance is against Jagex's rules, things like deathmatching were recently more defined in the rules and is now going to be banned in the future. But many of these players throw away thousands of hours of grinding and GP in a single night. For months, you'd see familiar names lurking around waiting for their next big win. The same people challenging these streamers over and over and over again. It's created this huge cycle of gambling addictions in many people. They've lost all sense of value for their items and money, and it quickly becomes a game of trying to win back everything you lost, until you've lost everything. Many of these players or streamers even take loans from their friends, clanmates, or even their own viewers. It's a cycle of huge dopamine mixed with desperation, looking to win back their GP. It leads to huge amounts of in-game debt that usually never gets paid back. You have to keep in mind a lot of these creators are monetizing off of things like this, using their status and being known in the game to get free handouts and donations from their viewers. Cross your fingers your favorite creator wins this fight, or you could say goodbye to all that GP you just gave them. Many of these deathmatching streamers either ended up giving up trying to pay back their viewers or completely quit the game, period. These people also start to turn to real-world trade as their answer. It's basically like they are buying back into the table for another go. You can see how this creates sort of a paradox. It's not just a few dozen players either. Every PvP world is littered with hundreds of these gamblers, most of which are chasing their losses, trying desperately to pay back their friends, but to no avail. While recording this video, Jagex just released a bombshell, stating they're going to finally release a complex system that detects and bans gamblers in-game. They've now gone the full mile to crack down on these games of chance, and after 2 years of creating a new system, Jagex hopes to ban all games of chance permanently. Just remember, Say nay to gambling. As I mentioned earlier, real-world trade is a huge problem. Some players have gone to great lengths to get the GP they want, GP just being the currency in-game. Some long, intricate lures and scams involve dozens of players acting natural, reacting to undetectable cues. Players will even chat you up and talk to you like a random player. Some players will even come and try and warn you of the scammer lure, which is being used as a reverse psychology kind of trick. Here are just a few instances of players getting scammed. As someone who's played for many years, I've seen it too many times where players die for billions of GP, then later letting us know in the clan chat that they will be quitting the game, or that they just got lured and are going to be taking a break. The top comment of one of these posts say, "Why even trade players at the GE? It literally is always a scam," which unfortunately seems to be the case most of the time. If you're curious, the Grand Exchange is just a place where a lot of players like to hang out, and there's a global market there where you can buy and sell items. Although it seems like a lot of these scams are easy to avoid, the biggest advice I have is simply don't give a random person your items, or don't follow shady directions or go to places you're unfamiliar with. But it's easy for me to say that as I'm somewhat of a veteran player. Some of these newer players are completely oblivious to the malicious intent a lot of these scammers have. I even have one of my own stories of someone trying to scam me. I unfortunately couldn't find the screenshots I had saved because this was kind of a while ago, but I had recently bought a powerful and expensive weapon to try new content, known as a twisted bow. Anyone holding a twisted bow is always going to be a prime target for these scammers or any other expensive items. I was just chilling at the Grand Exchange and someone was getting just a little chatty with me. I enjoy talking to other players and he ended up adding me to his friends list, and he even gave me a few million GP just to help out with my rebuild. The next day on Discord, he had DM'd me and asked if I wanted to help him anti-scam lures. This is one of the oldest tricks in the book and is infamous in the RuneScape community. I knew it was a ploy, but I was curious. We went looking for scammers to anti-lure, and he told me a world and a place to go. Unsurprisingly, within a minute or two, someone came running up to me while I was wearing my expensive gear. It was clear that this guy was in on it. Long story short, we ended up going to a PvP world, which for RuneScape, they have different servers, and there's different worlds, just to kind of reduce the load. But some are designated for activities, mini-games, but there's also ones for PvP, which lets you attack players virtually anywhere in the game. The guy was trying to egg me on to take out my expensive items on the PvP world, and was trying to convince me that I was safe inside this zone. Their usual excuse is that I was safe and we could anti-lure them. I obviously didn't take out my items, and I reported him and his friends to Jagex and other watch lists, but it just goes to show you, people will try their best to scam you, even if it means pretending to be your friend. Doxing is somewhat of a generic term used to describe when someone exposes or reveals personal information about someone online. This could simply be your name or where you live, but RuneScape has a few large groups of players that do much more sinister things. Funnily enough, while making this video, a Reddit post from 24 hours ago with almost 2,000 upvotes and 200 comments. So, there's an organized group inside of the game which will dox you, threaten or harass your family, fake evidence to frame you and Jagex has taken zero action against them. I really don't think it's worth paying a paid subscription for a paid server with this level of negligence from the company towards their player base's safety. This isn't just some edgy teen finding out your name or address. There are some very concerning and powerful people who will go to great lengths to ruin people's lives just for entertainment. There's also a huge rumor that these powerful people and clans are somehow associated with Jagex. And although I'll leave it up to you to decide that, one thing that is made clear is that these players hold a very tight ironed grasp around the game's community, and if they decide they want you gone or ruined, they will follow through and ensure that happens. It's become this sick little game for some of these people, where they are pulling those strings watching you dance and panic. And although I cannot prove every single one of these accounts of scamming or doxing are 100% accurate, it is known throughout the community that these things take place, and have been witnessed many times by different clans, players, and even content creators who will all say the same thing. Some of these content creators even say that some of their videos have sparked attention from these malicious groups and have even been blackmailed, threatened, and harassed. I know this is a huge concern and problem for any online service, especially in video games, but it's a bit different for RuneScape. This game is very old to be fair, and most players have played on and off for years. This culture of toxicity has kind of marinated with some of these groups of players. RuneScape has been the perfect game to attract these kind of people. There are already large groups of people that make a living off stealing and selling players' items for real money. It's easy for these large groups to prey on naive new players, and they have done so for a very long time. It's basically become a business for these guys to prey on newer players, and their track record shows they have successfully done so for decades. One of these sinister doxing cases documents dozens of players still not banned by Jagex that doxed and made fun of a player's late family member. The things they said in-game were so bad that I could not show them in this video, but the title of the post says everything that you need to know. Swatting is another problem similar to doxing and scamming where it happens in virtually every game or online space. But again, it's kind of different for RuneScape. This toxic entertainment for these people has been cultivated for decades. Endangering people's lives in the real world is the least of their worries, just like this story from 2015. Swatting victim to harassers. 10 cops pointed at my little brother. These swattings usually involve false calls to these people's homes, causing the police forces to act fast and be prepared for a threat at that level. This article talks about how police were holding a streamer's 10-year-old brother while trying to defuse and solve the situation. Here are even more instances of that. And although I know every content creator has to deal with things like this, Old School Runescape has a few pockets of players that fuel and perpetuate this kind of behavior. Here's an old Reddit post showing links and proof of large-scale doxing by a group in the game. One of these older cases was crazy because a Jagex staff member at the time was caught stealing large amounts of wealth from loads of players, many thinking he was involved in these large toxic groups of players, and it was also assumed that he unbanned and appealed appropriate bans to these groups of players, essentially protecting them. You see, this is kind of a deep rabbit hole that goes on and on. It's sad that things like this go on and continue to this day. Looking at all these continuing problems, it's easy to see the true nature of some of these RuneScape players. Malicious, greedy, and potentially deadly.